Thank you, Rita. Just in case we were getting too optimistic about bouncing back from this virus and all these shutdowns, the Reserve Bank Governor today said, no, we are not out of recession, which contradicted an impression one of his deputies had given a couple of weeks ago. In fact, the bank has cut official interest rates even more to close to zero, 0.1% to be specific. It's never been anywhere near this low. Now, that sounds good for borrowers. Money's almost free. It's meant to stimulate the economy. But if you're relying on interest from your savings to get you through this retirement, this is a huge blow. Joining me is the panel, Liberal Senator James Paterson, JENNA CLARKE, Assistant Editor of the West Australian. Look, James, this is not good news.
Andrew, is this where anybody, myself included, wants monetary policy to be in the long term? Absolutely not. We are in uncharted waters to have interest rates this low, to have the Reserve Bank engaging in quantitative easing, which it itself has expressed a lot of scepticism about in recent years. But we're also in uncharted times. We're in exceptional, extraordinary times. And unfortunately, I think some policy experimentation and some risk-taking is necessary and appropriate in order to fight the much bigger evil, which is mass unemployment. It is just absolutely critical we get as many Australians who've lost a job back into a job, and so that we can get them the dignity of work again and get our economy growing again.
I'm not necessarily quarrelling with the means. I'm just quarrelling more with the fact that whether it's a good sign. JENNA, but let me talk about the means. I wonder whether it really will work to boost investing and spending, even if the banks do pass the cut in full, and they're under a bit of pressure themselves, of course, bad loans and all, everything else. If you weren't borrowing money at even 0.25% interest, which it was, 0.25% interest, would you really borrow it? Oh, hallelujah, 0.1.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying, Andrew, specifically in these precarious times where unemployment is tipped to head into the double digits. But I think I immediately, when I saw the RBA governor speak today, I immediately thought of the older Australians who he mentioned in his speech, of the fact that, they're just going to have to bide their time and think of the common good. Well, sorry, but these people have worked their entire lives and have been basically planning for their retirement. Now this is all their income that they are sinking themselves into. And the fact that now we're telling them they're just going to hold on for the greater good, I just think that was a bit of a slap in the face, and I think the backlash to that is going to be quite astronomical.
JENNA raises a good point there, James, because for me there's a moral hazard here, right? What you're really saying is, if you've been saving all your life to support yourself in your retirement, not dependent on the government, you got your savings, and suddenly they earn next to nothing, at least in the bank or, in deposit, you've got to be, speculating or investing or something like that. That's a real worry, isn't it?
I worry about that too, Andrew. I worry about the impact on retirees and their financial security in retirement, particularly because it's not often an option for them to just go back and get a job and go back into the workforce. So it will put many of them in a difficult position. That's why, though, we have the social safety net in place, including the old age pension, to make sure that no one falls into poverty and destitution in retirement. There is that backup plan, but certainly for many retirees,
but it was
but
these are people. Yeah, but these are people who are proud and wanted to have their own savings, not reliant on the government. And, all right, the pension and all that, but, for heaven's sake...
No, I agree with you, Andrew.
I
agree completely. This is not the retirement that many of them would have envisaged for themselves, and it's not the world that any of us would have envisaged for ourselves either. And it's going to be hard on a lot of people. I have to say, though, I'm also equally concerned about young people who've been thrown out of the workforce, particularly here in Victoria, thanks to our second lockdown, who will find it much harder to get a foothold back in the employment market. And when they do, it'll be paid much less than they ever would have otherwise been. And so if you're in the RBA's shoes, what's the alternative? Increasing interest rates? Clearly that is not an option at a time like this. And it's vital that the government does its part by cutting taxes, providing incentives.
No, I got that. I'm just wondering... I got that. I'm just wondering about the efficacy of a cut when they're already so low. JENNA, US election result. Do you think it's going to make much difference to us one way or the other, and why?
Andrew, just watching Rita and the guys from The Outsiders over the past couple of weeks over in the US, I'm sick to my stomach with nerves about this, and I have no idea why. I have zero skin in the game, or so I thought. But I think the thing is that I feel that, look, I think as I've written for the paper tomorrow, I feel like this election is sort of like a box of favourites, and the only things we've got left is a Morrow and a squashed flake. Both are pretty uninspiring to me, but you've got to pick someone. And I think it really does matter to Australians, because we keep hearing, why do you keep banging on about this US election? And I think it matters is because we are friends. The US is probably one of our oldest and dearest friends, and I think we just look back as long as World War I. We've been together since then, shoulder to shoulder, and as recent as the bushfires earlier this year, where the first ones to come to our aid were the Americans. So you didn't really see the Chinese offering much help with helicopters and troops on the ground over here then. So I think it's really important to remember that they are our friends, and what happens to them really is a big concern to us. So I think all eyes will be on the US tomorrow, and as Rita said, for the next week, I think, as these results roll in.
Well, how do you see it, James? I mean, Jenna is nervous, but she's not. It's not one way or the other about, more nervous if one side wins or the other. What about you?
Probably the most important issue of American policy that affects Australia's interests is their approach to China. And the big question is America willing to, and is it going to, cede the Asia-Pacific to an expansionist Chinese Communist Party, or is it going to contest that realm and stand up for the rules-based order? The positive thing that Australians can take from this election result either way is that under Trump, a significant revolution on China policy has occurred, and it's now pretty strongly embedded as a bipartisan policy. There is some disagreement about the details, but by and large, everyone, particularly in Congress, agrees across the aisle that the gains that the Chinese Communist Party was able to make earlier in this century in the South China Sea and elsewhere should not be allowed to happen again. And I think regardless of whether Biden or Trump is in the White House, you're going to have that ongoing strong pushback, particularly because it's so deeply embedded in congressional politics now, not just presidential politics.
Well, I do hope you're right, but I'm not sure that Biden projects strength. And if it's Kamala Harris that takes over halfway through the term, dear God. And I'm surprised and disappointed you didn't say, I really want Trump to win. Culture wars. But very responsible of you, James. James Paterson, Jenna Clarke, thank you so much. Good on you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you to you both.
Thanks, Andrew.
After the break, incredible. Watch a journalist of the left trying to justify a witch hunt to drive off the ABC a guy they think is a conservative. This witch hunting is getting right out of control.